Welcome on in to the live stream of Ether's Elephant. We're going to have a great show today. On today's show, Trunk Treasures, Polygamy Excommunications. What a controversial thing. Big Ear Bulletin, the breaking news. Don't use the M word. Let's find out what that's all about. But first, the elephant in the room. Crosses coming to a chapel near you. And to talk about this with me, joining me today is Mormon Book Reviews, Stephen Pinecker. Stephen, thanks for being on.
Thanks again, Rylan, for having me on. I always enjoy our conversations, often off the record on the phone, but I love doing these live streams with you. And yeah, we talk about so many interesting things. Good thing I hope nobody has a bug on my phone. So, but it's fun. Man. It's fun conversations we have. We got to know each other a lot better. I think, there's a lot of people in some spaces in the faithful space that like, what's this evangelical doing? And I think now they've kind of grown accustomed that I'm not a hater. I just literally just came from a Book of Mormon study at a neighboring ward that I go to every Wednesday. And I get to spend time with just regular folk who are lay people, who are believers, who study the Book of Mormon and apply it to their lives. And it's so fascinating to me just to sit in that and have that privileged experience to see that. And I go to these Christian, I often look at these Christian apologists who gets into debates. Like I was talking to Jacob Hansen on the phone today. I said, saw that you had a debate with another evangelical apologist. He's like, yeah. He said, problem is at least with you and Pastor Jeff and Kyle Bashirs, you guys actually know what you're talking about when it comes to Mormonism. Yeah. You kind of get sick and tired of getting into these debates with these guys who don't know the first thing about Mormonism. And this one of them guy freaking lives in Utah, and I'll guarantee you he's probably never sat in for an extended period of time and studied the Book of Mormon with Mormons, with regular folks, and sitting in the pews and hearing what's being taught and what's being said. The Mormonism he's trying to debate or fight against doesn't actually exist in a practical level. It's what's actually Mormonism is what's going on in the local wards and how it's affecting people's lives and how they're applying it and how they're living their lives. And I think that's a if you're not familiar with that type of Mormonism, you don't know Mormonism.
Well, we like having friends in the evangelical community. Let's get into this first segment. Let's
do it.
The elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room.
Okay, yeah, it's a fun, cheesy segment, but we're addressing on Ether's Elephant. We're addressing those topics that people don't want to talk about, and one of them is this: the adoption of crosses by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You said this to me, speaking of some of those private conversations, right? At one point, you said, "Hey, I wouldn't be surprised if within like 20 years or so, that the church decides to start putting crosses on top of the." Let's talk about it. Sorry, I think I cut out there. I said that's interesting. Let's talk about it.
And I was being provocative when I say that, which of course I'm known to do now and then, and I like to have fun and get rises out of people. But really, I think it's what we're seeing is we are seeing shifts that the church is doing. Okay, we can talk about this throughout the conversation because there are some more changes coming. I mean, that I'm aware of. That's going to be
you have the inside scoop. Is that what you're trying to? Is this breaking news? Right?
No, we're not breaking any news, but I'm having.
I only say that because you broke the purchase of the Kirtland Temple, right. So you do have breaking news under your belt. So okay. Anyway,
yes, maybe one day I would love. I'm holding on some stories. I've got some stories that I'm holding on. I'm like, oh my gosh, if and when this ever drops, this is going to be huge. But I when I said that, like, yeah, within the next 10 years, I can see you guys having crosses. And I even said, like, yeah, one day I'll be driving through beautiful Lehigh and you just see all these wards everywhere. I said, and imagine in 10 years, there's going to be crosses on every one of them. I remember joking with Rick Bennett about that when I first came there. And what's so funny was when I told Rick that was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, it was a joke. But then just 2 years ago, the church, working with Google, changed the symbol on Google Maps that wards used to have the Moroni symbol, now have a cross on Google Maps. And the only things that have Moroni symbols are temples on Google Maps now. And so I'm like, if the church is using a cross to identify itself in the in that world,
on the
in
Google,
the
on the maps. Yeah.
on the maps, is using a cross to identify a location. How much longer before a cross is actually put on a building to identify the location? I think it's just a logical step, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if it happened.
Okay, well, can I give you some reasons why I think this is absolutely never going to happen?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, first off, I guess we should talk about, the elephant in the room here, that the church hasn't always been so anti-cross.
Correct.
In fact, one of the stories that I always think of, and I had to look this up just to make sure before coming on here, was in Salt Lake, they were planning, it was the presidency of the bishopric, and supposedly there was approval by President Joseph F. Smith, was planning on putting a giant cross up on Ensign Peak. And it even got approved by the local government. And then ultimately, I think from what I was seeing, I guess there were some people who didn't like it, some communities, like Jewish communities in Utah, that were like, no, we're not going to have a giant cross on Ensign Peak. So the church has never really historically been anti-cross until kind of probably President David O. McKay, I think, said a few things about like, hey, let's young women stop wearing crosses, kind of a thing. So I think that's kind of the history there. But I will say one thing is for sure, there's never been a time where the church, even prior to President McKay, has put crosses on chapels. There's been moments where they're more lenient about the cross and whatnot, but they've never had them on the chapels. So point number one. But okay, here's the real reason why it's never going to happen. Okay, the church is extremely frugal. Do you know how much money it would cost to like just build little crosses to put everywhere? It's like, it's not even worth the money. And
yeah, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a frugality thing, I don't think they care about it that much. Number two, though, here's what I notice about our church, and one thing I love about the church. We kind of play this game where, hey, sometimes we want to be associated with the Christians. Like, oh yeah, we're Christians just like everyone else. Other times we're like, oh no, we're not like every other Christian. We are very unique. We're very different.
Right.
And we play this kind of like pick and choose game. So I think the cross is one of those pick and choose where, sure, we want people to think we're Christian. We want people to look up and find a cross on Google Maps when they're looking for a way to worship Jesus. But we kind of want to be that unique, hey, we're those buildings that look a little bit different. We're those buildings that look like this, except for without the cross. This is actually, I think, almost an exact chapel that, I don't know, there's a bunch of chapels that look like this. But anyway, your thoughts, Stephen?
First of all, I think the cross on there just looks really awesome, to be honest with you. I think it looks sharp. I think I always thought there was something missing. There was always something missing, but now I see.
Yeah.
That's it right there. I think that's interesting. Yeah. And I'm, of course, being provocative, but let's just think about this and just kind of give the history a little bit about David O. McKay, because David O. McKay, what he was doing was he basically went to the brethren and said, okay, guys, we're shaving off our beards. We're going to wear suits, and we're going to look like 1950s era mainstream Protestants.
See, I always joked that the reason that happened is because they were in some meeting in the temple, and Jesus came down visiting them, and he was clean shaven in a suit. And they're like, wait, what's going on, Jesus? Oh, I guess we got to shave and wear suits now. That's what
Jesus is like, it's the 20th century, guys. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, he's like, why do you guys still have beards? Get with the times.
Get with the times.
But yeah, that's where the clean cut. Yeah.
Well, I actually want to share, too, that my family comes from a Dutch Reformed tradition that actually kind of looked down on people wearing crosses because they thought it was too Catholic. And so the crosses were kind of viewed was a Catholic thing. So I think this comes out of David O. McKay's Protestantization of the Mormon Church in the 1950s. And one of those things was he also wanted to distance itself from Catholicism. And so he wanted to emphasize the cross as the result. Now, keeping in mind that David O. McKay was best friends with the Roman Catholic bishop. As a matter of fact, they used to play. They were in the same poker group. He used to play poker with the bishop all the time. So he was good friends with the bishop. But there was this tension that it was always there too, because what happened was the Catholic Church raised funds to build a mission in Utah, and David O. McKay took this as a threat, because he was looking at mission in the way that missionaries, your church would look at a mission, to be proselytizing. But he didn't understand that a Catholic mission was built that it's a different terminology, and so it wasn't to do proselytizing like Mormonism. So there was some tension there. But I also will say that when David O. McKay passes, the bishop made sure that when his vehicle passed, the procession passed, that the bells were ringing at the cathedral in downtown Salt Lake City. So David O. McKay had this wonderful relation. As a matter of fact, Derek Prince's book about David O. McKay, where everything I just told you comes from. So yes, he did play poker. Yes, he did actually preferred. I was told he liked Coca-Cola, but his secretary said actually no, he liked Pepsi. So that was wrong in the book. But there's a lot of things going about David McKay that made him a really interesting dude. And so that's kind of the background and the history of this idea. Now, keeping in mind, we have pictures of Brigham Young's wives from the 19th century where they're all wearing crosses. Okay, so the question is, okay, frugality. Well, first of all, the church is spending a ton of money building tons of temples and spending $2 billion to renovate the temple in Salt Lake City. So, and they're going to the amount of money they're going to be spending, that they're going to be putting in downtown Salt Lake to build what they're building is substantial. So they have the resources, and to put crosses on chapels would not be that expensive. And the cost of putting a cross on a building, the PR benefits that they might get out of it might even be worth even more, because they will then, the perceptions that people would have of the church is that they have a cross, therefore they must be a Christian church.
Is that how it works?
And, well, that would be
but they don't want to be a Christian church in a lot of ways. I do think
they want to be called Christian. They want to be called Christian. And
I do, at least.
If you see a building that has a cross on it, you just assume it's a Christian church. So for me, it's just an investment, a wise investment for being able to just have that. Look, these buildings sit here empty like most of the week, right? They're just sitting there, like the one here in Florida. I drive by, the parking lot's empty quite often, right? And there's no signage
Tell your
up front.
To get it together.
It's a stake center.
Someone playing basketball or something,
Yeah, I'm sure. There is. But what I'm saying is that you got this building that sits empty quite a bit. You don't have signs up front, so people can't read the sign from the road, and you don't have a cross. And it's like, what they need to do is, not only do they need to have crosses, they also need to have signs in front that tell you, welcome to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and these are Sunday meeting times. And so people can even know what time they can go to attend services and be more welcoming that way. I think if they made those alterations, it would be, they would seem more welcoming to outsiders, and it would be less imposing. And I think these are just little things that they could do, just architecturally, that I think would improve the standing of the church in many communities, especially that maybe aren't majority Mormon.
Yeah, interesting to hear your thoughts. So it sounds like you want this to happen. You want the church to adopt crosses as an out, or are you going to throw up your hands and say, I'm just neutral?
I do like the direction in many of the changes that the church is doing, and some of the stuff that I'm hearing that's being proposed, I'm actually very excited about. And I do think that there is this sense that that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints wants to kind of be maybe kind of lined itself closer to Protestant Christianity in many ways, and evangelicalism. I don't know, but I do feel like there's a sense that they want to really. I think to me, putting a cross on the building would be helpful to the church. Now, am I saying this is what the church needs to do? That's up to you guys. Am I necessarily rooting for it? I don't know it, because I'm also one of those people that, as much as I see all these changes happening to your church, and sometimes I think it's good, I'm also the first guy that that will probably buy a keep Mormonism weird shirt too. Like, I kind of like the weirdness of Mormonism, and I almost feel like that is disappearing. And so I want this balance. I want some of the weirdness of Mormonism, but I also want to see the church not only institutionally make some changes, and also maybe embrace the cross and traditional Christian symbols. I think these would be of good benefit to the church and its members, more importantly.
I do think, culturally speaking, some members of the church are adopting the cross symbol a little bit more. I feel like I've seen more active members, particularly young women, who have chosen to wear a cross. And, it's fine. It is kind of like a cultural thing. There's no like doctrinal reason.
Well,
The prophet talked about
but
emphasizing the resurrection, I suppose. But like,
well, yeah, well, and that I always think too. I know that's the argument. Like, well, we focus on the resurrected Christ, not the cross. But the Protestant symbol of the cross is specifically an empty cross because that is indicative of the resurrection. There's a difference between a crucifix and a cross. The crucifix has Jesus on the cross. That's the Catholic emphasis. The Protestant emphasis is an empty cross, showing Christ's victory over death and the resurrection. So that's how we view it. It's in a similar way, but we view the cross as being a symbol of victory over death and the resurrection. And so that's how the empty cross is viewed in the Protestant world.
Yeah, I like that. And I was just thinking, so the logo for the church right now, every so often they kind of make some tweaks to it. Right now, is Jesus coming out of the tomb with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints below it. I would see them putting that outside of churches before putting crosses on. But again, your prediction, luckily for you, is you didn't put a timeline on it. You just said at some point in the future, I wouldn't be surprised. So you're kind of covering all your bases here.
Covering all my bases. However, I will tell you, a cross would be a heck of a lot cheaper than a Christus statue in front of one of those buildings.
Yes.
So if we're going to go the frugal route,
I wasn't thinking a full-on statue, but like a sign with the logo. But the thing is they change the logo. I think that's part of the reason they don't have like the times in front, because it's changed. You'd have to like edit it every time when the church changes what time people are meeting and whatnot. But it's an interesting thing to think about, because I do think the church is trying to say more than they did in the past, that we are Christians, we believe in Jesus Christ. I think a lot of that came from President Nelson, with him trying to move away from the term Mormon. I think is a way to kind of like get more in line with Christianity, at least as far as like the layman person is concerned, because all the people on Twitter are like, well, it's a different Jesus. But so I do think that any rebrand, if I get my hands in here, that is happening is always going to trend towards Jesus. And will that include crosses? I don't think so, but it could. It could.
I think, and you're going to see more and more the church getting more and more Christ-centric in many of its practices, even more so than in the past. It's going to be pretty remarkable, and it's timed in such a way that inoculates the younger people, and it's done in a way so that it won't upset the older generation as they move on with these changes.
Okay, see, that's the needle they're trying to thread, is not upset the traditionalists and all that. Yeah, well, I'm all for Jesus. That's who I worship. So I like it. But let's get into the next segment here. We're going to talk about the trunk treasures, the hidden gems from across the internet. So let's get to it. And real quick, we got a super chat from Kiori who says, crosses are okay, but we all know the real Christians walk around with soil from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, like me. That's cool, Kiori. You've been to Jerusalem, and he said this is tongue-in-cheek, by the way, so he's trying to be funny. But that's really cool that you've been to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. You have to tell me more about that. That's awesome. Really cool. But let's get here real quick. Just to remind everyone, the purpose of this channel is to elevate members of the church by building bridges of understanding through fun and informative content, and also to help honest actors to take the church seriously by exposing limitations of critics and correcting misconceptions. So thank you all who are helping contribute to that mission. We have our Pachyderm members, Jacob Wardle and Professor Chimp. I think I saw Professor Chimp in there. He is attending. I think you're watching this at work or something, Professor Chimp. So, hey, don't get yourself in trouble, man. You can always watch it later if you want, unless it's fine. Okay, Mammoth members. We got Curious Mad Cat. I believe, Curious Mad Cat, you are a Catholic. I know you're not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so I think you're Catholic, but I love having you on here. Kiori, who we just heard from in the super chat, which is awesome. Brooke Sabin, Brooke Sabin, Thorgus951, Zachary Thornton, Smuggy Thornton, and Through the Mist 1830, who is actually going to be joining me in the future on a live stream. He has his own channel. So thank you, everyone. And, on this channel, we're trying to talk about the things that are the elephant in the room. We're trying to correct these misconceptions, have fun, understand each other better. There's so much different thought within the church. So if you believe in that mission, want to join the herd, you can always subscribe or become a member. But also, I wanted to shout this out for you, Stephen.
Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Tinnitus. Do you want to explain what this is all about? Looks like yummy food at Texas Roadhouse.
Yes. So I just want to let everybody know that nationwide at all locations of Texas Roadhouse on this Monday, they are going to have a fundraiser to raise the funds for tinnitus research to be given to the American Tinnitus Association. And of course, about a year and a half ago, going on 2 years ago, I woke up one morning with a very loud noise in my ear. I went deaf in my right ear, and basically I had a terrible condition called tinnitus. And the reason why the Texas Roadhouse has this fundraiser, and interestingly enough, the district manager that oversees the Texas Roadhouse here is a Latter-day Saint. And so he shared with me, he says, the reason why we have this fundraiser is that our founder ended up, I guess I want to use the right term, unaliving himself because his tinnitus was so bad. And so Texas Roadhouse does this fundraiser. So what we're doing is we're kind of doing a local collaboration at my own local Texas Roadhouse in Bradenton, Florida, and the information's on there. And I've posted that on my community page or my post page on YouTube, as well as in Facebook and on other platforms. This is the information. So at my personal location, I'll be doing a little meetup. And so I'll just get a table.
Road trip to Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, road trip to Florida. And so this will be a little meet. So those of you who are in the Tampa Bay area, I would like an opportunity to come on by and help a good cause. And I would love to meet you and greet you. This will be a great opportunity. But again, if you can't make it to the particular location, please go to the local Texas Roadhouse this Monday and help with this worthy cause. Thank you very much, Ryland, for allowing me to share it here.
Yeah. And I didn't realize it was going to be everywhere. Heck yeah, Texas Roadhouse. Yummy. And yeah, that's great. Tinnitus is not a fun thing. I mean, I don't have it, so I can only imagine. But sorry to hear that you have to go through that. And I'm all in for trying to kind of improve health and research. In fact, that's kind of the area I work in. So that's awesome. Real quick, at Hellfire Agency says, back in the 90s, I remember the installation of more conventional steeples on old church buildings as a good sign. Now I miss the 3-tiered steeple. Okay, yeah. So you can kind of see when you're looking at different chapels, the era in which it was built. You have those, there's a lot of like 70s era chapels in Utah, and other areas have like newer. The 90s ones were huge because there's a bunch of 90s ones that were built out. So yeah, the steeples have gone through some changes. But I mean, I think more or less the churches are very recognizable. At least maybe that's because I'm a member, and so I'm always like, oh yeah, that's one of ours. But yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you at Hellfire Agency. Okay, Stephen, we got to talk about this. Okay. Because this is interesting, because just 2 weeks ago, I ended up posting a video sharing a lot of my thoughts about polygamy, and I addressed why I think people, kind of like the group of people who say they grew up never knowing about Joseph Smith's polygamy. I address the growing movement of polygamy denial, and I kind of shared my thoughts on that. And last, this is kind of a packed video, I shared what kind of my own personal thoughts and struggles with the morality of polygamy. And that was a video I made. Meanwhile, under the surface, I had no idea that some members of the church who you just interviewed would be, well, we don't use the word excommunicated anymore. The technical term for it is, I'm blanking on it, help me out, what they call it now, but functionally excommunicated.
Right.
And the wife was disfellowed, so I just finished listening to this, and wanted to get your thoughts on it about this controversy about people being excommunicated. First, we saw Michelle Stone take down essentially her entire YouTube channel. And now we have an actual excommunication. And again, I apologize for using the word excommunication because I know it's not called that anymore, but dismembership. No, dismembership sounds worse. What's the word I'm looking for there? He's no longer a member is technically what happened here. And his wife is just a member in like kind of like locked down standing is how I would describe it. But yeah, Stephen, what was it like interviewing them? What are your thoughts on this whole controversy?
Well, first of all, there's a wonderful couple who love the church and are continuing to serve in their ward as best they can, and attend services. And, they're going to just, hang in there, and hopefully that something will happen where they'll be able to find a way to make this work. It's a fascinating story because, I remember a few years ago, I had some larger podcasters at the time, larger than me, who one in particular was pressuring me, don't platform these people. And then as I started looking into it, I thought to myself, wait a second, when they write the history of early 21st century Mormonism, there's going to be a chapter about this movement. And it's my duty as a podcast of record, the only neutral Mormon podcast, that can interview these people, even so much for the important conversations we can have so that scholars in the future can read, watch these conversations in which you have a host that does not have an agenda, who's truly trying to document this historical event as it's happening. And I think it's an important place that we have to document these stories and recognize that this is happening. And I've learned a lot. I've become good friends with a lot of people, and including Michelle Brady Stone. I do believe that.
Have you kept up with her? What does she think about all this?
Well, I mean, they have the same area. They live in the same area. So I just want to tell you that there's a lot of outside pressure that's being put on these people. Okay, and so that's a real thing that's happening. And
you mean Michelle, from like from the church for them to stop kind of promoting this polygamy denial line of thought? Okay.
Yeah, and so it's happening, and so when Karen Hyatt was excommunicated a couple months ago because she did the opposite of Michelle, she chose not to pull her YouTube channel, and so she was X'd by them, and she came on my program shortly after it happened, and they chose to come on my platform because they wanted to tell their story to a more faithful audience, to tell their story, and so it's a very complicated situation and very sensitive, and I totally get that. So I try to handle this with as much sensitivity and empathy as I possibly can. And I think the issue I have here that I can't wrap my head around this. I can't wrap my head around that essentially the church is going to these people and saying, not only can you say that you didn't believe that you can't say that you believe Joseph Smith when all his public pronouncements on polygamy was that he was against it, and even some indications that he fought it. And if you're a faithful Latter-day Saint and you just go by what Joseph Smith said about it and walk away from it thinking Joseph Smith didn't practice polygamy, I think that's a defensible position to take. So now what the church is doing is saying is not only can you say you don't believe Joseph Smith, but you have to believe that Joseph Smith was a liar. Now, what is the one criticism that's directed towards Joseph Smith by his haters from the very beginning? Joseph Smith was a liar. And I think that I can't. And look, I talked to a BYU professor yesterday. We were talking on the phone. He brought it up to me. He's like, man, Steve, that couple you interviewed, I mean, I can't believe what's happening to them. I've talked to Mormon apologists who agree with me, who say, well, don't agree with me, but what they're saying is, we don't think this is a really smart thing for the church to do. So behind the scenes, there's a lot of people who are very faithful Latter-day Saints that are very concerned about this new development. And so that's kind of what's happening behind the scenes as well. So I think there's a lot the church has got to work out here. I've been invited. I'm going to be chairing a panel discussion facilitating the panel discussion. I don't know if I want to say chairman. It makes me sound like I'm more important than I am, but facilitating a conversation at the Journal of Mormon Polygamy Conference at UVU on Saturday, March 21st. And so we're going to have a conversation with women, 5 different women who are facing church discipline for taking the position that they don't believe that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy. So we're going to be fair and balanced here. When it comes to these debates, I've had Brian Hales come on, and Michelle Brady Stone come on, and Mark Tensmeyer will come on at some point, and Jeremy Hoop will be coming on. So we're just going to continue these dialogues about this sensitive topic, and we're documenting the real-time developments of what's happening for future scholars to use as a resource and to inform their scholarly work. So I think it's an important work that we're doing. So for me to say you can't platform this person would be like, no, I'm sorry, but we got to talk to these people because it's actually happening.
Yeah. Interesting thoughts there. I just want to share a few of my own. So, yeah, I mean, polygamy is a difficult topic, to say the least. So I shared some of my thoughts here. If anyone's interested, you can go check out the video. So I do think Joseph Smith practiced polygamy. I think how I would characterize what you're saying about the church is, I don't really think the church cares at all if people believe something different or struggle with Section 132. I think what the problem is when people start teaching that and spreading that publicly. And I think Section 132 is the crux to this entire thing, like the focal point, because it is canonized scripture in Doctrine and Covenants. And so whether or not Joseph Smith practiced polygamy, I think, comes down to Doctrine and Covenants, Section 132. And by publicly saying that he didn't, you're basically saying that that is incorrectly in the Doctrine and Covenants, or that's wrongly made part of the canon. And so that's what I would say. So I think people can believe what they want privately to a certain extent, or even like struggle with some of these questions. But I think the difference is like publicly kind of advocating for something that goes against the hierarchy and authority of the church, which says that this is canonized scripture, that says that no, Joseph was teaching this secretly, and he was teaching this, which is kind of how Brigham Young characterized it, and everyone's characterized it since. So that's kind of what I think. But, I do think I want people to have room to be in the church. I will not comment on whether or not it was a good thing or like a bad thing for this couple to be disciplined in the way that they were, because I have no idea what happened. I only heard the one side from
Fair enough.
What you said on there. So like maybe,
I'm open. I just want you to say. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm open to the idea that local leaders can sometimes, like, there's gonna be false positives or false negatives. Where sometimes people probably should be excommunicated that weren't, and sometimes people probably shouldn't have been that were. But that's kind of it's going to happen at the local level potentially. And the last thing I'll say before I'll let you say more on this is I actually think excommunication, and I kind of like how this couple's handling it, because it's not like it sounds like the ward. I'm really happy to hear that. It sounds like their ward is very open to them continually being involved with the church as much as they can. I love to hear that, because excommunication isn't like, it's not like the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. It's supposed to be, not this scary thing. It's just a way to, if you don't want to follow the hierarchy of the highest leaders, then you're not going to be part of the membership. That doesn't mean you can't participate in certain ways. And that doesn't mean you can't rejoin. And you're always welcome and stuff. So I love to see, that's one thing I really liked about this conversation. And I feel like this couple sounds like they legitimately, are trying to follow Jesus. They believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet. They believe in the Book of Mormon. And I love that their community, local community, it sounds like is, wanting to embrace them as much as possible. Anyway, your turn, Steve. I know I just said a lot there.
Thank you. Well, and I would say too, it's like I told them, I said, listen, don't be surprised if maybe your bishop or stake president reaches out to me and tells their story. Now, I can't say whether that
Oh,
has
you think
happened
that?
or
I
not.
don't think that's gonna happen,
Well,
but
but it's
maybe.
happened in the past. That's what I'm saying. I've
Has
had
it?
that experience. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I've had a bishop contact me and say, look, Steve, I've been a fan of your show for years, and I want to kind of give you my perspective because I
But
can't
not
share this.
publicly, right? Was that privately or
It
publicly?
was privately, yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, it'd be weird if
No,
a
no, no,
bishop
no.
was like, "I'm
But
coming
at
out
the
in
same
public."
time, and I've talked to many bishops, and they feel like, yeah, we wish we could tell our side of the story, but we're not allowed to.
Right.
And so I feel like that's not fair to them to put them in that position. There should be some means of them being able to at least be able to give some of their side of it, just because they feel so like they're being mischaracterized and they're being attacked in some cases. I would say that many of the people that I've talked to, that's not necessarily the case, but I'm just saying is like, that the fact that, yeah, so they whether they have reached out to me or not, I'm not going to say, but what I am saying is that in the past when I've had people who've been I have heard from their bishop and would spend a couple hours on the phone and kind of get a better understanding. And I'll never say who it was or about which episode it was, but I will say that I have a better informed understanding of the full picture, and that helps inform these conversations.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Someone just clarified for us that it's now referred to as withdrawal of membership. So not dismemberment, not excommunication, withdrawal of membership. And disfellowship is called formal membership restriction, which,
Okay.
yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, like the church has tried to, I think, get away from, because excommunicated kind of sounds harsh, but withdrawal of membership is what excommunication is. So it's kind of funny. We just
Right.
like moved away the word to just give the definition, because the definition sounds a little bit less scary than like excommunicated. But anyway, so I wanted to show you some comments from this video that I posted about polygamy. So first we have Daniel Stark 8356 says, if anything, the church has been openly doubling down on plural marriage in recent years, especially with the polygamy denial movement. So this is right in line with what we're talking about. As an outsider, do you see this to be the case where the church is kind of doubling down about plural marriage?
Oh, yes, I think so. I think that's definitely what's happening, is that this, even Michelle was describing to me as this is a new thing where now taking this position can get you excommunicated, or publicly advocating for it certainly can get you excommunicated. And so it's perceived as kind of a threat. And so, yeah, there's no question that this is a real thing, and there's more people that we expect will be excommunicated in the not too distant future. And it has, many of these do have the same pattern of, and now it's getting to the point where you just have regular folks who sit in the pews who go to me and say, I don't know, I don't have anybody to talk to. I can't express my opinions to anybody because I'm afraid I might get in trouble. And this is what I hear across the country, all over the place. And so they come to me and just tell their story, like, and
poor Steve,
you know,
you're getting all the baggage of like a bishop.
oh,
well,
it's
hopefully not as
true.
much as a bishop, but like lots of conversations of
Lots of
people who are
conversations like that.
worried about their faith.
Very much.
And I hope that can change in the culture, I guess, where I don't think anyone has like a perfect understanding or perfect answers for every single thing that can be difficult. And I know polygamy can be difficult for a lot of people, and that's okay. Like, it almost would be weird if it weren't difficult for you. You know what I mean? If you're just like, yeah,
Yeah.
champion polygamy. So like, and Joseph Smith's polygamy is very interesting,
Mhm.
because Joseph, I think, tried to hide it. I don't think, well, I mean, yeah, that's what I think based on the evidence that we
Yeah.
have from the historical record. But let me ask you this, Stephen. Mormon Book Review Stephen, Evangelical Stephen, outsider. Do you think Joseph Smith practiced polygamy?
Oh, and I've been very open about this, and even from the beginning when I was engaging people in this movement, I still stand by that. I believe that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy. And I have conversations with Jeremy Hoop and Karen Hyatt and Michelle Brady Stone and with many, many people. And I think it's kind of like with Cheryl Bruno, who does believe that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy, but she's also part of the Journal of Mormon Polygamy. She says, Steve, some of the research they're doing is pretty good. Like we need to help them make it even do better research, because they're digging and finding things that haven't been really well known in the Mormon history. And so there is a benefit to this movement. I think it actually will give us clarification. And so it's one of those things where, and the more time I've talked to these people, there was a time when I kind of looked at them as being flat earthers. And there is a conspiracy element to some of these people, but then there's some pretty level-headed people that I've talked to that aren't conspiracy theorists. And that's kind of, I've been really interested in those conversations, because I'm like, okay, you're not like into all the conspiracy stuff. In addition to Joseph Smith didn't practice polygamy, you're also into all these other things. You're like really looking at this pretty seriously and not viewing it through a conspiratorial lens, which gives it to me a lot more credibility as well.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I do like the pushback on the status quo. I do think it is fascinating. It's just one of those extra nuggets I kind of like to see, where in reality, there's a lot of things we don't know about the past. A lot of things in history that might be skewed because what survived is biased. It's not a random sample. Well, that means it's a very biased sample. I talk about this all the time. And so you can connect the dots in different ways. And I actually, at the very least, I'm comfortable knowing that I don't know everything about what happened in the past because I wasn't there. And so is it possible? Is it possible that Joseph didn't practice? Yes, it is possible. But I conclude, based off of, at least I accept the evidence that seems to support to me that he did practice. But I can understand at least why, if you looked at it a different way, you could come to different conclusions, because history is kind of messy sometimes. It's kind of messy. Let's get into this one real quick. This is from Timber Hardward. Do you know Timber? He's a friend of the channel. He is a Latter-day Saint. He does a lot of work with the LGBTQ community, particularly with
I've been in
gay men.
communication with Timber.
Great guy. He's been on the show. Everyone go check out the episode with Timber. It was great. We kind of reviewed his appearance on Jubilee with John DeLynn. But he says on this video about polygamy, I grew up in a part-member family, and I heard constantly from my staunchly dedicated LDS family that Joseph Smith had plural wives. We took pride in our own polygamous ancestors. Plural marriage is a sacred, glorious practice, and we need to embrace it. So we have, members like Timber here who say, hey, yeah, this is part of the history, and we've always known it's been part of the history, and it's not a bad thing. Let's embrace it. And honestly, like, the one thing for me, like, the morality of polygamy is interesting to me. I can be uncomfortable with it, but like logically understand it, if you will. And I explain more of that in the video if anyone's interested. But, I do believe that Brigham Young was the key holder of the priesthood, and that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the church, that Joseph Smith helped restore, that Jesus Christ restored through Joseph Smith. There's a reason I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and not a Biggertonite, for example, or not in the Community of Christ, for example, because I do believe that. And Brigham Young, and this was kind of what I talked about in the video, there's no question he was a polygamist. So either way, I have to deal with it either way. And to me, it's like Joseph Smith almost isn't as big of a deal, because it's like, okay, maybe he didn't practice, but do you know who did? Was Brigham Young. And there's no getting around that one, because he literally, there's offspring, there's pictures, there's no one even questions it. He was very open. It's in the history books of the United States. And so I can kind of understand what Timber's saying here. It's like, what? It's something that when people die and they're married to other people, how's that going to be handled? It's part of our history. I might not be comfortable with it, but at least I can respect and understand it. Your thoughts, Stephen?
Well, I think it's glad that you brought in the other branches of the Restoration, because you have the Mountain Saints and you have the Prairie Saints, and the Prairie Saints they didn't embrace that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy, and keeping in mind that the RLDS is Joseph Smith's family's church. That's the reality.
Emma and Joseph Smith III.
And they said that Joseph Smith didn't practice polygamy, and we have to remember the important role that the LDS Church played as caretakers of all the important sites of the Restoration, including the sacred scripture of the Joseph Smith translation. So I think it's really important that, you know, they were set apart to be stewards of the Restoration in the Midwest and of Joseph Smith's sacred scripture, including the printer's manuscript of the Book of Mormon and the Joseph Smith translation. So say what you will, but you know, you can't just dismiss that. And Joseph Smith referred to Emma as the elect lady. And so I think there was good reason for the Prairie Saints to maybe either be opposed to polygamy or to believe that Joseph Smith didn't practice polygamy. That kind of became the narrative of that church up until about the 1980s. And so now the Community of Christ does officially teach that Joseph Smith did indeed practice polygamy. However, the approximately quarter to a third of members who left the RLDS because it was getting liberal and because they were ordaining women and they were saying Joseph Smith did practice polygamy, they left the church. And so you could argue that the actual people who actually believe what Emma Smith and Joseph Smith III believed and taught is not represented in the Community of Christ, but it's with those independent Restoration branches and also some that have been formally organized Restoration branches, independents, that are actually the true kind of like inheritors of that narrative that Joseph didn't practice polygamy. So yeah, there's in other words, there are people who are Book of Mormon believers, believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet, and they don't believe he was a polygamist, and that's their position, and that's what they believe. But the key thing is, cool thing is, the Bickertonites, you can believe either one, and you won't get in trouble either way.
Yeah.
The Pennsylvania Saints, the Pentecostal one.
It's interesting. That reminded me of when I was on my mission. I got blessed to have many leaders of the church come and talk, and one of them was a member of the 70 who just showed up, and he was telling us about, you know, the Joseph Smith translation of the Book of Mormon and the manuscripts, and he emphasized that, you know, this is what he was saying, we have like the printer manuscript, but the Community of Christ has the original one that was used to create the printer manuscript, and that they are nice to us, and we have a good communication with them and good relationship with them, and we share them back and forth to do research because we both love the Book of Mormon. And he kind of emphasized that strong relationship we have with that other restoration movement to helping us better understand kind of the origins of the Book of Mormon in that translation process. And it was really cool. And he was saying this to a bunch of missionaries. So I think it's great. I'm grateful to those members of the Community of Christ who helped kind of preserve, in particular, the original manuscripts of the Book of Mormon that we have. I think are wildly underrated about how awesome that flipping is. Because it's like,
they actually have the original autographs, like a New Testament scholars. They would kill for that.
You see the dictation going on.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
It's like crazy. Like, you guys literally have, you literally have it right there. That's so freaking awesome.
It just kind of gives me chills to read like scriptures that are in my scriptures today from that original manuscript. It's like, wow, like this is how it just like came out. And you know, I'm a big believer of the Book of Mormon. All right, let's get into the last segment, which is the Big Ear Bulletin. The Big Ear Bulletin. Don't use the M word. You ready to find out what that is? Let's get to it. Run. So, one of the authors of the Salt Lake Tribune, Peggy Fletcher Stack, I'm sure you've heard the name. She has been writing a lot of articles lately, and unfortunately, many of them are behind that stinking paywall. But one of them I was able to pull up in incognito fashion and read, and it was one that the one that caught my eye the most, and one that I kind of wanted to talk to you about. Concerning this article is this one right here. What search data reveals about the move to wipe out the forbidden M word? Mormon. Did you think the M word was Mormon? Is that what you were thinking?
Yes, I
Okay,
did.
I thought so. I mean, what else could it be?
Eventually, I got there.
All right. So this, along with a few other pieces that she's released, this one, Latter-day Saint doesn't appear to be catching on. So what she basically did was someone, I don't think it was her original work, but she's kind of going off of someone else's research, putting in air quotes, of just kind of like the trends of usage of words. And since President Nelson said, hey, we're not going to use the term Mormon anymore, the question is has that had an impact on the usage of the word Mormon versus Latter-day Saint? And basically the answer is no. And part of that, you're actually seeing spikes in the use of the word Mormon every time Secret Lives of Mormon Wives comes out. But on the other side, though, you're not seeing like increased use. In fact, I think at one point it said it actually is arguably going down, use of Latter-day Saint. So as far as the online community is concerned, Mormon is just as popular as ever in some sense. And Latter-day Saint doesn't appear to be catching on, at least as far as the interwebs are concerned.
Correct.
So, Stephen,
Yeah.
I brought you on to comment on this, to talk to you, talk with you about this. So go ahead. Let's hear your thoughts, raw and fresh.
Okay. So first of all, people say, why do you have Mormon in the name of your channel? And I say, well, I said for years, I was watching all these YouTube channels about Mormonism, and the church spent millions and millions of dollars with the I'm a Mormon campaign.
I had a profile. I did.
It's okay. And I said, if you want to pay for whatever therapy that I would need to go through after I feel like I've had that drilled into my brain, Mormon, I'm a Mormon. But I said, I don't look at Mormon as being a derogatory term. Joseph Smith used the term Mormon to describe the religion. He was proudly used the term. It was a term that was used throughout the history of the movement. It is not a slur. It's the name of your scripture. And it's your central scripture. And I just think that, changing the name of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir is like changing the name of Coca-Cola. It's unthinkable.
I wonder if they shouldn't have changed that name, but
I think it was a mistake. I personally, my theory is, now this is just my theory.
Here we go.
I wonder if at some general conference, we're going to have a general authority just drop the word Mormon and just move on. And then everybody
coming back, you think?
Part of me thinks it's coming back. That's part of me's thinking that. I
know some Latter-day Saints. Our buddy and friend in common, Jim Bennett, has mentioned, at least indicated on Twitter, he's been like, so how long until the name Mormon comes back? I think he said that after President Oaks finally was ordained a few weeks after General Conference. So
yeah, I just kind of, part of me thinks that. I actually know a friend who he's a fundamentalist, and as soon as the church made that declaration, the first thing they did was a friend of theirs printed a bunch of I'm a Mormon bumper sticker, and so all these fundamentalists started wearing I'm a Mormon bumper stickers. Like, we don't want the name, we'll take it. And it was Benjamin Schaefer. And so I just think that President Nelson has had an issue with the term Mormon since the 1990s, since he's been in leadership in the church. We know that Gordon B. Hinckley was a big fan of the term Mormon.
And President Monson, yeah.
And President Monson. But Nelson, just for whatever reason, didn't care for the name. Rest in peace, President Nelson. But we do have a living prophet, and if they decide they want to bring back the term Mormon, of course, they would have every right to do so. I think that it's a marketing thing too. I get, like, on one hand, like, okay, we want to emphasize Jesus Christ, and I get that, church. The problem is that it's too clunky of a name, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Just it doesn't come
really
out real
long.
good.
I'll tell you what, when it comes to content creation, it's really hard when it comes to titles and stuff.
Yeah, how do you title a thumbnail with the full name, right?
Yeah, it's really tough. Really tough.
And so I use LDS. I always refer to it as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the description. But sometimes I'll use LDS, sometimes I'll use Mormon if it's appropriate. and it's shorthand. But I don't think we can get around it. And then when they go and say we're the Church of Jesus Christ, I'm like, actually, the Bickertonites would like to have a word. The Church of Jesus Christ, their Book of Mormon, and they are the Church of Jesus Christ in the Restoration, and they've had that title for a very long time. And I think it just adds more confusion, especially with the higher profile of the Church of Jesus Christ growing. It's only going to add more confusion, because essentially, what if they keep on insisting doing Church of Jesus Christ, it's probably going to lead to this group getting more clicks as well. So, and maybe they're okay with that. That could very
I think
well
they might be.
Yeah, but I think it's unfair to go to say we're the Church of Jesus Christ when there's already a church that has that name, and then to be so then at the same time, when my friend Matthew Gill, all right, who's the prophet, seer, and revelator of the Restored Church of Jesus Christ, their original name of their church was the Latter-day Church of Jesus Christ, and church legal department got on them real fast and made them change it. Now, I think it's kind of funny how they can go to one group and say, you can't use this name, but now we can go to a group and take their name and call it ourselves. I think it's a little, I don't know.
Are you just talking about the URL that we use in online church of, what is the URL? churchofjesuschrist.org?
No, I'm saying for use that a term, you can use the term the Church of Jesus Christ as
it's like a
another
short version of the
a short version of the title of the church. And my point is that there already is a Church of Jesus Christ.
I see. Yeah. The Bickertonites. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I will say this. So I am fine if people call me Mormon, whatever, it's not a big deal to me. But to me, the term Mormon encompasses anyone who believes in the Book of Mormon, which, as we just pointed out, includes a lot of different religions: the Church of Jesus Christ, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Community of Christ, arguably, if they still kind of believe in the Book of Mormon. But so I'm fine with that. The only thing that really bothers me, the only thing, I just got to come out and say it, is when people call it the Mormon Church.
Yeah.
The Mormon Church. You can say, hey, Mormons, Mormonism, because that kind of, Mormonism kind of encompasses like the theology that Joseph Smith taught. Mormons kind of encompasses people who believe in the Book of Mormon.
Right.
But there's not a church, at least as far as I'm aware, maybe you know, there's not a church called the Mormon Church.
Right.
And to me,
yeah,
that's distasteful, because it's removing the name of Jesus Christ, and that's who I worship. So I'm like, okay, I want it. Right. You can call me a Mormon, but let's call it the church by the church's name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So
in shorthand conversations I'm having with people, I might use the term Mormon Church, like if I'm just talking to a person who's an outsider and they're just like, okay. But when I always try to honor the name of the church. So whenever it's like, when I'm writing a description or I'm talking about it more formally, it's going to be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's how I see it. And sometimes when people do use misterms, I will correct them as well. So I do feel like, I get Mormon Church. I think that can be rightfully thought of to be maybe not the best way to call it. And I don't know if I've ever used the term in a title or thumbnail, but it's something I wouldn't use now.
Do you know who uses it a lot?
Mormon
Whenever
stories.
there's that's true. Whenever there's a member who leaves the church, they always say, I left the Mormon Church. And they always say Mormon Church. I think it's kind of funny. I watch out for that. Like, hardly anyone will say that they left the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I get why, because of the same thing we talked about earlier, where like you can't really fit that in the thumbnail, and like or in the thumbnail or in the title, and like the idea is like people know more or less what church you're talking about for the most part. But I think stepping away from Mormon hopefully helps to draw that distinction a little bit more, that there are different belief systems about the Restoration, about the Book of Mormon. There's the fundamentalist groups, there's Bickertonites, and there's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Brighamites, if you will. And I think those distinctions are meaningful to some extent. And if we're going to buddy up with any of them, I can see us buddying up with the Bickertonites the most.
Okay, great.
Which is maybe that's why we just kind of stop it short sometimes, and don't feel too bad about it. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. I don't want us to go back to Mormon, because as my own belief system has continually evolved. At least for me, I'm always trying to seek getting closer to Jesus Christ. And I don't think the term Mormon does that. Again, I'm fine if people refer to me as that, because
Yeah.
it's one of the groups that I guess I'm a part of because I believe in the Book of Mormon, but it's not the religion that I participate in. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my final thoughts on that.
I think that's a fair way to look at it. And yeah, I don't use Mormon Church in my typical vernacular. I think that's I think people who use the term, especially people who might know better, should probably maybe make some adjustments. At the minimum, say LDS Church. And it actually saves you more space than Mormon. That takes less words, so it's actually easier to put in a thumbnail and using a title.
Yeah, I mean that's closer because Church of of Latter-day Saints and Church of Jesus Christ, it's like that double possessive, where it's both the Church of Jesus Christ and the Church of the Latter-day Saints. So, but still, I want Jesus, man.
Just remember, for a few years, your church was called the Church of Latter-day Saints and didn't even have Jesus in the name for a while. So,
oh, really? Legally?
Yep.
I'll have to look that up. I know that.
Look at the entrance of the Kirtland. Look at the entrance of the Kirtland Temple.
Oh, okay. You're talking way back then,
Yeah.
before we got the section in Doctrine and Covenants that said, "And thus shall my church be called in the last days, even the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints." So I'm pretty sure since that moment, it's been like legally. There's a question about the hyphen, and that kind of like has come and gone at one point, but it's always
the hyphen is because the Strangites use it without the hyphen and a capital D.
Right.
So they're legally titled the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, they stole the unhyphenated version, which is funny because now in Doctrine and Covenants, you look at it, it was originally written without a hyphen.
Right.
And now they edited it but they add changes in punctuation. You open up your scriptures today, there is a hyphen. I actually made a funny video about that. Wow, I'm just tooting my own horn here, I guess, but go check it out if you want to have fun looking at the difference of the hyphen versus not the hyphen in the original manuscript of the original version of Doctrine and Covenants. And the question I try to answer in that video is, oh shoot, did I join the wrong church? Is this the same church that Joseph restored? Because the hyphen is there when it wasn't at the beginning. Anyway, Stephen, Mormon book reviews. I saw some people in the chat who were surprised to hear that you're not actually a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but you are a friend to the church. And so tell us a little bit about where people can find you and what you're going to be up to.
Okay, so you can check out my YouTube channel, Mormon Book Reviews, and we have a lot of interesting resources there, a lot of great interviews covering just different topics that, from Mormon culture to Mormon history to television, movies, documentaries. We cover a lot of multimedia stuff on our channel. It's evolved from just being a simple book review channel that I thought would have a couple hundred subscribers and it'd be just an ultra niche thing, to becoming one of those important voices in this space that is contributing to these important conversations from a neutral perspective, which is a very lonely place in this space in many ways, because I'm not on a particular tribe's team. But, and Dr. Randy Bell, calls it the Switzerland of Mormonism, and that's the space that we become. I do also call it a not the podcast, but a podcast of record that is used as a resource, by other media as a source of news and information, like they would use the Salt Lake Tribune. And so I think it's become that as well. And that comes from just working your tail off and having a good reputation of being able to put information out there that's reliable. And whenever we do, if there's ever a time when bad information is put out there, I will correct it. And but more importantly, it's more about than just having a YouTube channel. It's about relationships and friendships, building with these wonderful people. Even the hours and hours of conversations you and I have had on the phone and getting to know each other, that to me is more important. It's actually what happens off camera. That's really where the real work and heavy lifting is being done. And so I want to thank you, Rylan, because you're just one of those cool humans that's come into this space and making your contributions as well. And I want to, and what I like about you too is that you are very much about getting people to talk to each other. And that's why I want to support what you're doing, because we live in spaces that in both the ex-Mormon community and then even in the TBM community, you have some very toxic spaces there that can be quite ugly and dangerous. And I really think we need to elevate the profiles of people that are willing to stand up against the darkness, shine a light, build bridges, tear down walls, blow up silos, and all these things that are dividing us, and help bring unity to the body.
Wow, yeah, I like that, and I admire very much how on your channel and your personality in general is just trying to get people who disagree to meet together, to commune, to just have conversations in a respectful way. And that's great. I admire that, and I want to somewhat replicate that in some ways, where it's like, yeah, like I think the conversations between opposing sides, I don't see it as winners and losers. I see it as building bridges. And I think
Yeah.
that is a great thing. So that is Stephen from Mormon Book Reviews. Check out his channel. This is Ether's Elephant. Thank you for joining the live stream.